Hello, my name is Keith Elliott, and I am creating an app. It has a name, FlipAgain. Ultimately, we will be able to access it via FlipAgain.io. It's a flashcard app, flashcards being note cards that are used as a study aid. I'd like to invite you to join me, and on this journey, I'm learning as I go. You can follow me on Twitter at Keith T. Elliott. And let's do it. Here's the theme for episode number 1. ToDo. We will create a to-do app. To-do apps are common with developers, web app developers in particular, when learning a new technology or framework. And so we are going to walk before we run and create a simple to-do app. And the theme today will be thinking in React. Let's pop over to the reactjs.org homepage and surf our way over to the docs. And in the main concepts, down toward the bottom is an article called Thinking in React. Over the next little bit, we will think through our to-do app in the fashion that they guide us. Note that I am learning as I go, but I have been doing this for about a year. I've got one React app under my belt, and it took me about a year to even, I would say, comprehend the contents here. So don't be afraid to take time, back up, and start from the beginning. My intention here is to create a product, this product that we'll access via flipagain.io. However, as I go, I want to capture my experience and hope that it is a valuable learning resource for other creators. All right, so that's the context. Let's dig in. Thinking in React. One of the great parts of React is that it makes you think about apps as you build them. In this example, they walk us through the process of building a searchable product table using React. In our example that we will walk through right now, we will create a simple to-do app. So let's see what they're telling us. Start with a mock. I call it a mock-up. A sketch, essentially, of what we want to create. So we are going to fire up our virtual whiteboard and create our own sketch. We have a sketch of what we want the user interface to look like and what contents it may include. And they also note that you can also represent it with data. Okay, so let's first sketch our app. If we pop over here, first of all, we will create we'll call this our window for our user interface. And so it will have a title, To-Dos. And at the top of our user interface, we will include the ability to add a to-do with an input box. All right. And then once we have to-dos in the mix, we will show them. Say we need to walk the dog. And maybe we need to wash the dishes. And that's about it. Pretty simple. Okay, so here's our mock-up. It's designed to be simple. Let's pop back over to the docs. They think through the data. Our data will be, let's see, we'll go look at our data. For our data, we will include I'll just underline the bits of data. So we will have the contents of the to-do list, names, or call it text, the text of a to-do. We will have, and that's kind of it. In each to-do, there will be an inherent order, or call it a priority. Oh, you know what we need to do also is we need to fill out the UI. A couple things I want to add. I want to add the ability to move an item up in priority. So we'll have a button that allows us to move an item up, a button that allows us to move an item down. We can remove an item. We need to be able to edit an item, and we need to be able to mark an item done. All right, so these are little buttons, and we will repeat the buttons next to each one, at least in this app. Okay, so the data that we have essentially is all wrapped up with the item. So we will have the actual item. We'll need some way to define if it's done. It will have an inherent, say, order or position. And I think that's about it. So let's pop back over here. Like their example, there are just a few items per their product. Okay, cool. So step 1, break the UI into a component hierarchy. The first thing that we'll want to do is draw boxes around every component and subcomponent in the mock, and we will give them names. All right, we're going to do that right now. Before we do it, let's look at their example. They have a box around the entire app. Often there is a root component. So we'll have the entire app. They have a searchable box or a search feature, the table as a whole, a category header, and item rows. And they've given them names here, as you can see. Okay, so we will draw a bunch of boxes around our components. So let's give them different colors. So first of all, the main app as a whole will be a component, and our input box will be a component. Each of our items, I would say, will be a component, or we will call these rows. Within the rows, we will have buttons. The buttons I would propose are probably their own components also. And just like the example, we may need a component around the entire table or list of items. I think that'll work. All right, so let's go back and let's name them now. First of all, our root app here, we will name, let me just change this to black. Let's name our root app ToDo app. Okay. And then we'll name this guy ToDo new. And we'll have a ToDo table. We will include a, let's see, this row. This will be a ToDo row. And we have a bunch of buttons. We may or may not prefix the component names with the word ToDo. I don't know, we'll see. But for now, I will prefix them with edit, or the word button. So we have the button for edit, a button for delete, and the button for down, button move down, and we'll just piggyback on this one, down and also up. I think there'll be two separate components. And then finally we'll mark, we need a button for marking button, I don't know, toggle done, something like that. Okay, so we have, we've got a full whiteboard. Like my whiteboards in real life, it's kind of cluttered and messy, but it's it works. Okay, cool. So let's roll. So let's head back to our docs and think through what's next. So they named theirs. The app itself they called filterable product table. They have a search bar, a product table, rows, etc. Okay, got it. So their next step is, now that they identified the components, arrange them into a hierarchy. Components that appear within another should appear as a child in the hierarchy. Okay, let's do that. Pop over here, we can clear this. And at the top of our component hierarchy, we have our ToDo app. So at the top, we'll be looking at our ToDo app. Okay, so right at the base or the top, we have ToDo app. All right, and then really two children under that. We have the ToDo new and the table. So under that, we have ToDo new, and then under that we have ToDo table. All right. Within each table, we have a table row. So table is prefixed with the word ToDo, but we get the picture. Maybe I can do that. ToDo table row. And then within each table row, we have these buttons. Button, what is it? Toggle done. And button move up. Button move down. What else? Delete and edit. I'm running out of space. Button, delete, and they will be separate, but since I'm out of space, I'll just pop it here. Okay, so this is our component hierarchy. Looks good. Okay, so that's it. So we've thought through a mock. We sketched on a whiteboard what our app may look like, what data it will include, and what components it needs to include. We took a stab at naming the components, and we drew it as a table or a hierarchy of components as well. All right, so we've got this wrapped up in our mind, and we're off to the next step. Build a static version in React. Okay, so let's do it. We have some choices to make here. How should we do this? If we pop back over to the web, we have a couple options. For this particular example, they used CodePen. CodePen is a great resource for cranking out simple apps. I started along this path, but ultimately I decided that we would use Redwood.js. Well, I guess that's not it. Redwood. Oh, it's, yeah, redwoodjs.com, not .org. Okay, so Redwood.js is a framework for helping to produce full stack apps, and that ultimately will be what we need. Another common option is create React app. So anyway, you can Google it and track it down. This is not it. We'll find our way to this. Is what I'm looking for. Is the GitHub source code for the Create React app. So it's a tool to help, put all the pieces together and create an app. Yet another option is Gatsby. Gatsby.js. The prior app that I cranked out, I used Gatsby, and it was fine. I felt like ultimately I needed some help with the back end, and I like the theme and the vision that the folks that are developing Redwood.js have in terms of helping not just the front end but also the back end. And so let's dig in. Let's use it. All right, so we will start with the tutorial. We won't work through the whole thing, but we need to walk through enough to get us moving. The React or the Redwood.js folks have pumped a lot of energy and have great resources in their tutorials here. I've spent, I don't know, it's maybe an hour of content, and I probably spent 12 hours. It's really good, and it's pretty dense. So anyway, I encourage you to dig in, but for now, what we will do is just get started, just dip our toe into it. And by the way, this assumes you're familiar with a few core concepts: React, GraphQL, and the Jamstack. So I'm familiar with them. I guess familiar is a relative term. We need Node and Yarn. I have those. If you don't, go grab them. And let's go. So here's the command. Fire up a terminal. And I have one ready. I need to move an old one to do _old. All right, so now I've got a blank slate. And here we go. Yarn create Redwood app. Yarn create Redwood -app and the name. ToDo. Yarn create Redwood -app /ToDo. And there it goes. Okay, so off it goes to install packages that it depends on, plus it sets up the directory structure. Alrighty. Okay, the installation just wrapped up, and now if we pop over to our terminal and then pop into the ToDo app, we can see the files and folders that it created. All right, so here we go. Let's, we can fire up the app via yarn redwood dev, yarn. You can type it out, or the shortcut is RW and dev. And it is firing it up, and I believe it will launch our browser once it's ready to roll. And as it's doing that, we'll go continue reading. So it will launch the browser in localhost 8910, and we will see a welcome page. And we may as well go ahead and commit as well. And here's our page loading automatically. And there we go. Welcome to Redwood.js. Okay, so let's pop back over to the tutorial. We will go ahead and get init. Let's see, I need a new terminal. All right. All right, in a new terminal in the same directory, we will get init, git add, and then initial commit. Boom. Okay, next. The tutorial walks us through the file structure. I can leave that up to you to dig into. And we do need to create our first page. So yarn redwood generate page home. So we will create our home page. Let's do it. Yarn redwood generate page home. Yarn redwood generate page home / and it's creating a new home page for us, and we see where it put it. So let's pop back over here, and now our localhost 8910 shows our home page. It's not too fancy at the moment, but this will be the destination where we will create our ToDo app. All right, so let's fire up VS Code. And why don't we find our way to the page that we just created, the home page. And just to get our sea legs on, let's edit it and see that we can see that edit, that change. So we'll start with updating the title. And I believe essentially what we'll end up doing is let's add we will add our ToDo app component here. All right, so that will be that. And save it. Now let's go look. Ta-da, to-dos. Okay. So not horribly fancy. I'm going to zoom in case you're on a phone and want to see it. Okay, cool. All right, so that's it. We have this palette, this blank palette, blank slate for us to create our app on right now. Okay, so that was a little bit of boilerplate setup to get us going, and now we can get back to our reactjs.org web documentation and think through building a static version. All right, so now that we have our component hierarchy, which is right here, it's time to implement our app. The easiest way to build a version that is to the easiest way is to build a version that takes our data model and renders the UI but has no interactivity. It's best to decouple these processes because building a static version requires a lot of typing, etc. All right, so we will build the static version that renders the data model, and we will use props. We will not, in this version, use state at all. State is reserved for interactivity. We will need to get there, but not in our first early sketch of it. Okay, so let's build this. Let's go look at our component hierarchy and think about which component we want to create first. I would say, let's create our to-do app root component first. Okay, so let's pop back over to the terminal. And we will use another generator command, yarn rw for redwood, g for generate, component, and then the name of the component, to-do app. It will create a skeleton, little core component for us, and even without looking at it. Let's go back to our home page and replace right now. This is what it looks like, and we will add. I'll just zap this whole line, add a new one, and add to-do app, and it auto magically imports it, which is fun. There we go. So let's see if it worked. To-do app. Okay, cool. So it added it. Now let's think about what we will pass to it. We will pass to-dos. To-dos equals, and then what we will pass is an array. So why don't we create this array? So const to-dos equals, it's an array of objects. All right, so each object will include an ID and the content, we'll call it text, walk the dog, is complete, will be a Boolean. Anything else? That's probably fine for now. All right, so we will be bad and copy and paste. We'll create a couple little seed guys here for us. Wash dishes. Learn React. ultimately, won't it be fun? Study with FlipAgain. Okay, so we have some data, some built-in data, and we will pass those as a property to our component. It should still work. We haven't touched the component. So let's go look at the component. It's under components, ToDo app. Let's fire it up. All right, so we passed it as a property. So this is a function component. We will destructure the properties object here in the argument of the function and grab the to-dos. And let's just print them real quick. We will stringify it real quick. I need a little MDN JSON stringify. I think it's just that. Okay, so I will delete that. And here within this JSX, we'll say JSON.stringify to-dos. All right, there we go. Let's go look at it. Okay, so we have printed our to-dos. There we go. Okay, so first step done. We have a core app, and we passed our data to it via props. Okay, what's next? Let's go look at our hierarchy. Before we even create the new, I'll probably hold off on the new component. Let's create the table. Feels a little redundant. We could potentially do without this table, but nonetheless we will create it. So let's create that, and in the ToDo app, ultimately there will need to be state, and it will live in the core root app here, not in the table. So we'll go ahead and pass the to-dos to the table, and then loop through them, printing each item. So that will be the core thing here. Map or loop or map over to-dos, and yeah, all right, so that's our next task. So back over here, ToDo table. We'll create a new component called ToDo table. It created it. We will pop back over here. Here it is. We will pass in to-dos. Again, it's an array. And in this case, what we will do is to-dos.map. We will map over the contents here. All right, so within each let's see, within each item of the array, we have an object, which is a to-do object. Ultimately, we may need access to the index, and I think we will just return, for now, let's just return the text. And it's fussing that we're not using index. Get rid of that. And it's also not liking something. Oh, missing a key prop. Okay, that'll work. Why don't I make this instead of a div here, I'll make it an unordered list. And we'll make these a list item. And we need a key. It's a React thing, so you can go study up on that. But now we have it. Okay, cool. So when we pass the to-dos to the to-do table component, it will map over the to-dos, printing the text in an unordered list. All right, so let's go call this guy from our app. So instead of this, we'll call to-do table, and it auto-imported that for us. And we'll pass the props, to-dos, voila. Okay, we should now on our web page see our unordered list. Let's see if we see it. Ta-da! What fun. Okay, cool. Super cool. All right, so let's think what's next. We will need, let's pop back over here. Next item probably is our table row. And the table row ultimately will also encompass these buttons. It feels a little redundant, but you know, we'll roll with it. Okay, so we will create a new component called table row, to-do table row. All right, so back over here, to-do table row. And the to-do table row will accept just one to-do, not an array of to-dos. All right. So the to-do table row will accept a to-do. And the to-do is an object with our ID, text, etc. And for now, just to get moving, let's simply return to-do.text just within here. All right, and so that now we'll pop back over to the table. And even I guess the way it's presented can be up to the table. Like in this case, it's a list item. So we'll keep the li, here on the to-do table component, and then within here we will simply call the to-do table row. Boom. And I think yes, it auto-imported for us. And we need to pass it the to-do. Okay. All right, so now let's just pop back over here to the row. It's pretty simple. It should look exactly the same. Let's just look at the app, and it does. Okay, just to help it look different, ultimately we will need the index. So I think we'll need the index. So let's pass in the index and print it. Oh no, it's wrapped up here in the object. Okay, so we'll just print it comma separated. Okay, and then in the table, as we map over it, we will include the index. Well, yeah, so let's see. So the to-do doesn't know, the to-do doesn't know its index. So we will actually need the index, not within the table or to-do object. So there is a to-do and there is an index. So this pops out of here. Okay, so when I save this, it'll refresh and we should see the name of the to-do and the index. And we see only, I guess it's not liking that. Okay, so let's do this instead. I think that might work now. Okay, here we go. All right, got it. Okay, so let's go back. Why don't we go all the way back to our crazy whiteboard sketch here. So we have our content, or the text of the to-dos. We have our list. Let's go ahead and create these buttons. I think that's next. We'll do maybe in this mock. Well, I guess, I don't know. We'll see. We'll first create the first one. So we'll call it to-do button toggle done. To-do button toggle done. So that's our next component to create. To-do button toggle done. And it created it. We will go back to VS Code. To-do button toggle done. And this guy will simply I think we will use the ID to identify. Ultimately, data needs to be passed to this to identify which button to call done. Could potentially be the index position. It could also be the ID. I think we'll use ID. So we won't need the whole to-do object, just the ID. And we'll zap all the boilerplate here and include a button. Mark. Let's see. I guess I was going to write mark as done. I guess, I don't know, we can think through what to say. We'll just toggle done. That'll work. And right now the ID isn't used. Again, our React guidance is create a static version. And so this is it. It should work, just a button. I mean, there's more to do, but we'll call it good for now. And so let's go back to our table row. Next to our, instead of this index, we'll send it the to-do button toggle done. And we are going to give it an ID equals to-do.id. Okay. All right, so I think we're going to have a not so pretty button next to. Yep, there we go. Got it. All right, so that's our first button. Back to the whiteboard. let's create another button. We'll do the move up button. Okay, so ToDo button move up. Okay, I will create this button and the other 5 or so, but I won't make you watch me do it. I'll hit pause and pound them out, and then we'll be back to add the new ToDo component as well. Okay, I powered through adding the remaining buttons, and here they are. It's not so pretty, but we get the picture. And on within the components, you can see the new ones that I've added. All right, so the next item is right at the top. We need the input, the ToDo input. ToDo new, we called it new. I'm thinking input. So anyway, let's pop back over here. ToDo, we'll just call it input, ToDo input. And so let's go to it. And it will simply be an input. Type equals text. So this will probably be a controlled, what we call a controlled input. But for now, the goal is a static version. Which feels a little silly or a little awkward. Let's see, we won't even know. It'll be brand new. So I can't think of anything that will pass in. I think this is it. Input type equals text. We could put the title right here, add input, add a ToDo. Or we could put the title outside of the component. We'll see, but we'll put it there for now. All right, so I added this ToDo input, and this guy will live in the, I think it's in the main ToDo app. Yeah. So above the ToDo table, we will have ToDo input. And it auto saved it or auto imported. And we're good. So when I save this, we should have the new input text box at the top. And there we go. Okay, yeah, okay. All right, so this was the goal. And sort of good enough, probably, in terms of the task at hand. Create a static version. It feels like there's a lot to do here, and that's okay. That's the way we roll. So we did it. We created a static version. We can do more with properties and without state. In the docs here, they talk about props versus state, and it's good to think through that. I spent time today studying up on the topic. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, pretty interesting stuff. So I'd recommend that you dig in also. But let's go ahead and pause. Let's think about the next step. Identify the minimal but complete representation of the UI state. All right, so this is probably a good place to stop. It's probably another hour of digging into the state and fine-tuning this baby. So let's wrap for now. And we'll kick off in episode number 2 with incorporating state and making this app dynamic. All right, so just wrapping up where we are, again, in this vision of creating a product, FlipAgain.io. We're starting small with a simple to-do app. We hopped over to the React docs, and in particular, the Thinking in React article, and we're working through the process of thinking about an app and implementing it. We created our sketch, our mock-up. We named our components. We defined what the components should be. We sketched our component hierarchy, and we built a static version. So this crazy whiteboard sketch now looks like this. Very humble beginnings of our to-do app. Okay, all right, well, that's a wrap for now. I enjoyed digging in, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.